Well, hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee here on this Tuesday night. I've had a few days off from work, so I'm kind of off kilter here schedule-wise, but it is Tuesday night, November the 27th, 2018. Certainly feels like it's a late November day with all the cloud cover that we had today, thanks to that storm from yesterday that is now up in northern New England. And guess what? Not moving very fast, so that's made for some complications in parts of upstate New York, where we are dealing with some snow, and also on up into interior northern New England, where we're dealing with some snow, and more snow is coming up in those areas because we've got a peppering of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings that are up at the moment. And we're going to go through all of that. I got some snow maps that we could take a look at as well. So that'll be putting things into perspective in terms of the snow amounts. We also have freeze warnings down for the coastal Carolinas down into northern Florida because of where this storm system is. Cold air is getting pulled all the way down through the southeast and into Florida. We've also have got a couple of systems to deal with out in the west. A very interesting long term, in my never to be humble opinion. So we're going to get this whole show underway as soon as I can find my window that I use. Now, where did it go? It was here a second ago. Why does it do this to me? Here it is. So let me bring that up to the top. Sorry about that, folks. So we'll start tonight with the watches and warnings and the advisories and everything else that we are seeing across the United States. So we've got a fairly large area in Maine, just about the whole state, except, Maine. I always figure, I'm guessing that, this would be the southeastern part of Maine, but it's actually in the northeastern part of Maine, depending on how you look at it. But no matter, we've got a large area of the state with winter storm warnings. Same for northern New Hampshire, still under winter storm warnings. A lot of areas, especially some of the elevated areas up in Vermont and New Hampshire, got hit with a foot plus of snow so far. Advisories and winter storm warnings over parts of central New York and southwestern New York State and northwestern Pennsylvania. You see the freeze issues with the freeze warnings down along the Carolinas into North Florida, South Georgia, and we've got winter weather advisories up for parts of the Dakotas, another small area back in the northern Rockies, and then of course we've got various flood watches, winter storm warnings, and winter storm watches up for parts of California in the interior, and a little bit of action way up in northwestern Washington, north of Seattle, a small area of flood watches in that region. But first things first, just want to look at these current temperatures that we're experiencing. It's not all that cold, really, when you think about it. Certainly in perspective to last week, it's not all that cold. For this time of year, this is fairly cold when we're talking about temperatures generally in the upper 20s, but more in some of the coldest spots. But most spots are in the lower 30s. It's certainly cold enough to support snow, and in some cases, as we said, some heavy snow. But if we drag the map down through Virginia into North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, now it's 7 in the evening, and temperatures, Jacksonville is at 48, Tallahassee at 42. I mean, this is pretty cold air that's come down, and you even have temperatures down into the 50s, down to Tampa, Orlando. You go back, the upper 50s going way down into South Florida. You have to really head down for Pompano still in Miami, both at a leftover 63. But this chill is going to be felt pretty far to the south. And further north, we're seeing temperatures in the 20s and 30s, and then back through the 20s in the Ohio Valley, low 20s and teens as we head around the Great Lakes. Remember, there's snow cover here from yesterday's storm that left up to a foot of snow over parts of Chicago, or at least on the north side of Chicago, going up into northeastern Illinois. And a lot of these areas, by the way, had not only daily record snowfall records set, which really, when you think about it, is probably not the biggest accomplishment given the time of year, but just the fact that a lot of those were also all-time monthly snowfall records with regards to the highest snowfalls recorded ever in the month of November and for the entire month of November. Now here's the radar at the moment, and you can see the rotation of the storm that is still sitting in northern New England. So a lot of these echoes here up in Maine are coming in from the southeast into northern Maine, and then they're rotating counterclockwise. So you're getting some storm-enhanced and lake-enhanced snows going on through a good chunk of upstate New York. And when you see the darker greens on the echoes, my experience with this stuff on the backside, usually when you see the darker greens, that's where it's snowing pretty hard. It's probably snowing in most places where you see the darker and lighter shades of blue. Oftentimes that could be just precipitation aloft, but just judging from the observations that I've seen, we are seeing, you know, some light snows falling in those areas. And when you get into the darker greens, that's when you get the surprises, like Timothy Veltman, who messaged me earlier how he woke up to a surprise couple of inches where he is in upstate New York. Meanwhile, the winter weather advisories in the Dakotas, you've got those radar echoes there, and then we head out to the west, where this is such an important part of our weather going forward with the pattern that is setting up, because we keep seeing these storms coming in one after another off the west coast. So busy indeed, and likely to get busier along the way. Just give me 1 second here while I move these maps around just a little bit. I'm just trying to make sure that you guys are seeing what you should be seeing. And I think, hold on. So let me just double check this. For some reason now, hang on. All of that, I had, my apologies, folks. Let's try this again. This is what happens when you hear those temperatures. Okay, sorry, wrong window. Now I got the right window. Glad I caught that early enough. Okay, so that would have been great that you would have been staring at that all the way through. So let's just really fast review that again. I'm just going to go really quick. You can get down into the south. These are 7 p.m. temps throughout much of the southeast and into northern Florida, where we've got 30s and 40s, and then you've got these 20s and teens as you head up into the areas of the Ohio Valley and on up through the Great Lakes. And now the radar, which out in the west, as we said, very important to our weather in the long range, because we do have this split flow in the atmosphere, so we're getting weather system after weather system coming into the west with various strengths, and that will mean for more storm activity going forward as we move into the next week. Now, with respect to snowfall amounts, I pulled up a couple of National Weather Service snowfall forecast maps for the various offices in and around the Northeast, because they know their area certainly better than I. And this is the total snow forecast through November 29th, 7 p.m. So we're talking about 7 p.m. Thursday, and a large chunk of Maine getting, 8 to 12, and 6 to 8 and 8 to 12, and you go start to see the amounts kind of tail off as you go further south. So basically, north and west of Norway, Skabagen, if I've said that correct, and Bangor. So north and west of those areas. The coast really doesn't get very much out of this. It is mostly inland. You start to go inland more than 50 or 60 miles, you're going to start to find snow cover from this. And further west into Vermont, we're looking at some elevated areas that are going to do rather well here with 8-inch plus snows in some places. You can see the amounts being forecast for some of the bigger cities, Manchester 4, Bennington 1, Middlebury 3, Montpelier 2, Burlington 3. You can go to those local National Weather Service pages and pull up these maps anytime, or you can even pull them up on my website. I've got them all on one page up and down from Virginia to New England. If you go to my website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com, and just click on snow forecast. Up in northeastern New York, the northern part of the Adirondacks, forecast office going for 4 to, like at Lake Placid, Cranberry Lake 5, Malone 8, so some 8-inch plus amounts in addition to the snows that have already fallen there. And then as we look down the Hudson Valley, Saratoga, one of my favorite places, only less than an inch. You can see up in the valley area going up the river, there's not a whole lot being forecast here. It increases as you go to the west and to the east because of the elevation. So you actually have a lot of those areas which aren't even under any kind of advisories, but then you get into these pockets where you get elevations and you go into the Berkshires and you're talking 3 to 4 in Pittsfield, 4 to 6 in Grafton on the other side, on the New York side, Chatham 2 to 3, and Great Barrington 2 to 3 inches, Hunter Mountain 2 to 3, and then of course the amounts cut off to 0 as you go further south, and then they pick up again Indian Lake, Old Forge, and so on. And going further west into New York State, in central New York, 9 for Cooperstown, 10 at Hamilton, Auburn 10, Syracuse at 8. You know, while I got this, let me see if I got this working. Let's take a look. I can pull up. This is the Armory cam from Armory Square in Syracuse, New York. So this is a live webcam here. And just to give it a quick check, it does not look like it is snowing. Looks like they're still getting either, you know, there was some rain earlier. It doesn't look like any precip is going on there. And when we look at the radar, much of the echoes were not quite to Syracuse, at least at the moment. So that, again, is the Armory cam that you can find by going to Armory Cam, ARMORYCAM, one word.com. Okay, so back we go to take a look at where all of this is going to be taking us in the next week or so. First off, in the short range, I want to mention the fact that wind is going to be a big deal here in the mid-Atlantic, particularly around the Chesapeake Bay area, and then on up coastal New Jersey, southern New England tomorrow. You can see that the pressure gradient is pretty tight. You've got this low this evening that is sitting in the Gulf of Maine, high pressure that is in over Kansas City. The gradient is going to get tighter during the day on Wednesday. The surface low, I do have that before. Let me come back to the surface map for a moment. So this is how it plots out this evening. Get the latest map up there. And, oh, Mr. Internet, can you respond? I guess not. Oh, here we go. So we'll get the latest surface plot. The low center is sitting probably right near Portland, Maine. Remember from yesterday, we were looking at this primary low, secondary low, and the secondary was going to completely take over, which it has done. And now that low is occluding out. There's going to be another low that's going to form out in the ocean that is going to move north and northwestward and take over all of this. And that is actually going to throw back some more snow eventually back through Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and back over into Maine for later Wednesday night into early Thursday. So kind of busy there. And of course the flow with these isobars, as we widen it out, you can see that the flow, well, now it's too wide. There you go. But you know, you've got breezy conditions with that cold air streaming down from the Great Lakes all the way down into the southeast. That cold front, by the way, with that system has cleared the entire state of Florida and is almost at western Cuba at the moment. So the problem is that the low is going to take its sweet time. You can actually see the GFS do the redevelopment here. There's the low for 0Z tonight, and then by 12Z, you've got a surface low out at 37 and about 64. And that low is a 988 low, and it's going to strengthen, and it moves north and northwestward. It's on the edge of the screen here, but I can pull it up on the Canada view, and you'll see it better here. So it really strengthens into an animal. There's a 956 low. That is a very, very deep low that is going to be just on the eastern side of Nova Scotia. So you're looking at really strong winds here in southeastern Canada and over into New Brunswick. I'm thinking the GFS probably is underdoing the cold air that is going to be involved. So I'm thinking that this may be more snow than anything else in Nova Scotia, particularly on the western side of Nova Scotia, and I think it may eventually wind up also into the eastern side of Nova Scotia. That is one wrapped up low. The wind field, that'll be interesting to take a look. Look at these winds that are forecast into New Brunswick and over. I'm trying to see, here's Nova Scotia, so in toward the coastal areas, you're talking sustained winds of 40 knots plus over a large area on the west side, and even into southwestern Newfoundland, getting into some 50-knot winds, that purple area just about touching the coastline, and then continuing on up west-northwestward toward the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. So we are looking at, you know, a powerhouse here, and then the low just kind of spins away and then drops southeast and moves eastward. It's one of those times where it doesn't keep on moving north or northeastward, but just peaks out and then moves southeast and east and gets kicked away out into the open waters of the Atlantic by the time we get to Friday. But even, you know, you see the gradient, by the way, even on Thursday back to New York City and New Jersey, you're still getting into some wind here with that deep low that's way out over the ocean. So pretty interesting when you look at it. And the snow amounts, again, I think this might be a bit off, but you might want to tuck in those snow amounts a bit further to the south and east. Just, you know, from my perspective, I'm thinking the cold air is going to be more important, and it really nails Newfoundland, some areas of Newfoundland with 25 centimeters or more out of this through 72 hours. But I think the western flank is going to be a bit more of this. You can see what the GFS does back up through Maine and New Hampshire. These are, you know, total snowfall amounts with big pockets there of 1 foot plus snows, and even down into northeastern New York. When you're kind of got that air, that marginal cold air, elevation is going to mean everything. All right, so come back home, everybody. Let's look at, well, we got the snow map up, so you can also see in the next 72 hours some hefty action in the Rockies, the northern and into the central Rockies, back westward into Nevada and northeastern California, and the mountains of Washington, and more so in Oregon than in Washington, but still plenty of snow. And by the way, the snow cover across North America continues to grow at a rapid rate and will likely continue to increase rapidly into the next week with these next two weather systems that are going to be in play. Not so much with the first one maybe, but definitely with the second one. And, well, the first one's going to increase it down in the Rockies. That we think is going to be the case. So what we have when we look at the upper air, very, very important. I'm a, you know, when patterns develop, there are certain patterns that I always like to, you know, look at, and they kind of scream at me to pay attention, because they can be very, very dynamic. And I'm going to start with the upper air. This is for Thursday, and I'm going to put up the paint. Let's put up the paint box. There is Mr. Paint Box, and let me bring it up on the screen for you to see. Which I'll do that now. Here we go. All right, so this is our upper air on the GFS. This is for Thursday afternoon, and you'll notice wherever the bluish areas are, you're looking at heights at the 500 millibar level. How high do we have to go in the atmosphere in meters to get to a 500 millibar pressure? So, you know, we've got the sort of even look of everything around the northern hemisphere. When you see it in blue, that is telling you you've got below normal pressures, below normal heights. So your jet stream is continuing to be displaced pretty far south of where it normally is. If you've got a normal flow that's west to east, well, you have that, but it's just displaced way to the south. And you'll notice that the flow in Canada is still pretty weak, because you do have this block in play. And let me get the right size. You still have this blocking upper high right in here, okay? So that has completely displaced. There's our big storm that's going to be near Nova Scotia over the next 36 hours. So that low is kind of pinned in there, and you've got this upper high that's holding it. It's keeping it from moving more northward, and this is one of the reasons why it's going to get pushed out to the east. But in the meantime, if you look at the Pacific, okay, you've got a lot of energy running in the southern portion of this jet stream that is going to be screaming weather system after weather system into the west coast, but particularly into California. So it's really more in the southern part than in the northern part. Not that there won't be anything coming into the northern part, because you do have some energy around there. But my point is that, you know, you've got this southern stream of winds here moving weather systems along across the country. The Canada right now remains especially weak in terms of the flow. We don't have a really strong Canadian connection, so you're basically bleeding down what cold air there is. And remember, that's all snow cover up there, so it's cold enough. It's just not that super cold air like we saw back around Thanksgiving Day. But in a pattern like this, when you start to get deeper and deeper into December, particularly you start getting into late December, January, and February, this could wind up being an interesting pattern overall, because you're going to have this southern jet stream shooting these wet weather systems across the United States, and you're going to have cold air that over time is going to want to bleed further and further south. So that could lead to interesting developments going forward. Now, I'm going to take up another shot. We're going to move the jet stream along, and I'm going to take it to about a week from today to show you just what we're changing into, okay? The pattern itself, I think we're kind of in this sort of evolutionary process when we watch all this happen. Now, the block is going to break down, so when we look a week from today, you've got a slightly different look to things with respect to the upper air pattern, but it's still potentially dynamic. You've got a ton of energy around, but now you've got a much better established flow of cold air coming down from northern Canada. Okay, so the Canadian part of the jet stream is trying to revert back to some sense of normalcy, but at the same time, you also have you've got this cutoff low that is sitting between the dateline and over the southern part of the Aleutians, with a trough extending southward. You've got a strong system out in the Pacific that's getting close to California, but then you have a ridge here that is in the Gulf of Alaska. So the flow is split, okay? You've got one jet to the south that's coming into the United States, and then you've got the colder jet to the north that's getting established more and more over time. So again, this is a process, and while this is happening, we're going to be seeing weather systems impacting the east. We've got one for Saturday into Sunday morning. We've got another one here that's going to be impacting the east next Tuesday. We're seeing a series of storms that want to go to the Great Lakes or toward the Great Lakes. So we're going to see primary lows that are going to go to our west and then attempt to redevelop right along the coast. We've just had two of those. We're going to see probably two more in this current pattern. Okay, so let's come back, and we'll come back to the jet stream, and now I'll show you what happens in between. So we'll roll it back. This is our map. Here's today's, of course, last night's storm, and now you know, kind of waiting for this upper low. Look at that energy, that really dark blue spot off the Carolinas. So that really energizes that coastal low and explodes it as it heads towards Nova Scotia. The block, of course, still pretty strong here, and then starts to weaken as we go into Friday and Saturday. Now, Friday, it's hard to see on this this very wide view. There is a weak short wave that's coming through the Ohio Valley. There's some lead energy that's coming out from the west. The stronger energy you can see is the trough that's in the southern Rockies there. That waits for Saturday, but that first lead short wave has some weak precip with it that could come through late Friday or Friday night. I don't think it's any big deal, but it's really the second one. And the mean trough position is a little bit further to the west. You see that there's a bit of an upper ridge that builds along the east coast. So at this point, when we get toward the end of the week, there's not going to be a whole lot of cold air left. So even places like in the Midwest, which were able to support some snow with the system from yesterday, they may not have that much cold air this time around, unless you're right underneath this upper low that is going to be moving over Iowa and into the Central Lakes. But you've got more energy coming into the west here late Saturday night and Sunday. Watch that trough, the one that we circled down south of Alaska. That just kind of drops into the northwest and then drops southeastward into Utah, and then eventually that is going to wind up getting kicked out to the northeast. All right, for whatever reason, let's see if it came back. Sorry, I think my map's locked up a little bit here. Let's see if I can switch. No, it kind of froze up. Let's give it a minute to. Let's give it a second here. See if it. Nope. Doesn't want to. All right. You know what? I'm going to come back to you guys. I'll take some of your questions, and if I get the internet back, we will bring the maps back up and continue this. Oh, let me see. Did that do it? Yep. Okay. Figures. Okay, so let's come back. Let me keep going. All right. So there's your here's your jet stream. Now we are at Sunday. Saturday night, Sunday system lifts out. Now this one is a little stronger for Tuesday, so that has more cold air. And again, now you're getting that Canadian jet getting involved, and you see it here. And it's pretty well involved into days 8, 9, and 10 into the east. One of the things that I want to keep an eye on here, whenever you've got a flow like this from the northwest, sometimes you can get some energy that wants to dive southeastward. So I want to keep an eye on that. There's more energy coming into the southwest by the end of next week, and then you've got this whole trough in Canada kind of lifting up and rotating around. Deep low forming in the Gulf of Alaska. I'm not so sure it's going to wind up going in this particular direction. So I want to watch this. Let's put it this way. I'm going to watch. This is something I want to watch closely over time to see how the models change with regards to how they handle what's going on off the Pacific coast and on up in Canada, because there's so much energy running around. I've got a sneaking suspicion that you're going to wind up seeing this being a bit different as we go through the next couple of days. And by the way, if you look up toward Greenland, you do have another one of these pulses that's blocking this high, this ridge from Scandinavia, kind of trying to pulse its way into Greenland again, into the longer term. So you do have a blockiness to things as we get toward the middle of December. I think there's a lot in the upper air that supports this. There's so much, having that southern part of that jet stream in the Pacific so active, it's sending these weather systems along. As I said earlier, this will become problematic for a number of areas going into the long range if that pattern holds beyond the middle part of December. There's no guarantee that it will, but want to keep our eyes on it for sure. And I also want to keep close look in the next coming days on what's going on across North America going into the first 2 weeks of December. All right, so here's how our surface looks. So let's take a look. Here's that weak area of moisture coming in. It's lead energy that shoots out of the Gulf, and there is not much with it. With hardly any upper air support, it's likely to fall apart before it gets here. So other than a rain or snow shower, there really won't be much. But you are seeing that next low rev up near Kansas City. Snow back through Nebraska and into Colorado, but rain again. There's going to be another round of rain here for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states for Saturday, late Saturday into Saturday night, and then we might see some improvement on Sunday, but notice, except for right on the northwestern part, north and west of that surface low, there's a narrow band of snow being indicated, and that's about it. So there's less cold air to play with here. Some cold air starts to get drawn down as that Canadian jet begins to strengthen as the next low comes out. And this is Monday afternoon. You've got a low in northwestern Arkansas and snow on the northern and western side of that. Primary to southern Indiana to northwestern Ohio. There will be probably an attempt for some cold air in New England. That's something we'll have to watch to see if there's some snow at the start as that moves northeastward. The GFS late this afternoon says yes, but you know, whenever you get a primary that goes that far to the west, it's very, very difficult to get snow, particularly along the coastal plain. Inland areas might be a bit of a different story. I would like to see maybe a bit more in the way of cold air, but you work with what you got. And that low, again, primary to the west, western New York, and then a secondary develops again. So it's primary, secondary, primary, secondary. When those lows go west of the Appalachians, those secondary lows form way too close to the coast and usually too far north to have any kind of snow impact. But if you read the GFS, and we'll look at the European shortly, but when you read the GFS and all of this, it does at least suggest that there could be, you know, another round for New England, which would make total sense. And then the low wraps up near Cape Cod and goes out. And then after that, as the pattern rearranges itself, you got a couple of lows that get sent out along the southern stream. I would highly, you know, at this stage, of course, this is subject to huge change without notice from run to run. Again, something I think, though, what the upper air is telling us is that we probably do need to watch carefully what evolves past the December 2nd and 3rd time frame and going forward from there. All right, let's tighten up and take a look at rainfall, because you know, we were looking at some of the rainfall here in my neck of the woods, and you know, we've had close to 8.5 inches of rain. We've had anywhere actually from 7.5 to 9 inches of rain here this month, which is 2 to 3 times, almost 2.5 to 3 times the average. So the system for Saturday night into Sunday produces 1 to 2 inch rainfalls for much of eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. Actually doesn't produce that much, under a ½ an inch, but we've seen models kind of underdo the rain lately. And then with the second thing, it's got an additional ½ an inch to 2 inches in some places. So you're looking at a 8-day GFS rain total. You can see how the GFS kind of plays it out. And of course, some of the precip that you're seeing in upstate New York and in northern New England, that is coming now. So when it's all said and done, you know, a good chunk of that could wind up being snow. The second system may be mostly rain as it goes up because of the lack of cold air once this upper low pulls out. The 10-day snowfall ought to be a gem, and here it is on the GFS anyway. That's a large area of snow, and you can see the widespread snows, even with that. A lot of this is being produced by the system for early next week across the Midwest, and Chicago again getting it, maybe even Detroit getting it if the GFS has its way, which we don't know that that's the case. And might as well roll it out to 10 days. And going out west, we'll go to the western U.S., give you the wide view of the west. And, you know, it's pretty significant. The snow cover in the next 10 days in North America, if this verifies, is going to be pretty far south for this, you know, for the date for December 7th. You're probably going to have a good chunk of the northern half of U.S. under some form of snow cover here if these models verify, which is always the big question. The European has a very slightly different view of things as you go down into the long haul, and it has to do with how it handles, you know, how it's handling the block, which is a bit stronger in the interim, but then of course it disappears. You've got that big wrapped up low near Nova Scotia. Then you've got the Western energy, which I think the European kind of, 1 second. Sorry about that. I knew there was that didn't look right. Okay. I'm like, why did that map look the same? Because it didn't. It wasn't the same. I had the wrong one up. Okay. So here we go. So here's the block. It still winds up getting out of the way, but there's still some remnants of it here as we head into the weekend. And now the Sunday system, which the European kind of takes it up further to the north. You still got all this western energy, so it's got that flavor of the split in the same way. And late next week, look at the fetch of flow in this in Canada. This I think is worth drawing on. You know, its view of the split is a bit differently because of how it handles the systems up in Canada. This is over at day 8 in the long range. So let me make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing on the paint box. Okay, so look at the Europeans got a much stronger system here coming into the west and into California in particular. Let me just highlight that right in here, okay? So you still have this, you know, really long jet from the Pacific that goes all the way across, and the European actually has I think a stronger looking jet coming out of Canada. While specifically, again, the models really have a tough time showing very much, this is something that I want to keep an eye on again going forward, because I think we're going to wind up seeing this change. The European here says that the eastern part of this trough lifts out, and then the vortex that's up in northern Canada kind of drops in, so it wants to make more troughing out in the west, but it keeps the flow kind of flat here in the east. It's not shooting up the ridge. It's keeping it kind of a flat westerly flow. There's still a Canadian connection that we're seeing. Whoops. There's still a bit of a Canadian connection that we're seeing here on the European out at day 9 and 10, where you've got this, you know, kind of double vortex over in Hudson Bay on northwestward. You got a flow that's coming down out of Canada. You've got, you know, a flat flow here in the east, a little bit of ridging, but not very much. And you still have this really strong jet coming in from the Pacific. So, this is a time of year where I really enjoy it, watching the pattern evolve. I may not wind up with, let's say, a happy ending when this is all said and over if you're a snow lover, because you know, we could wind up seeing a pattern flip going forward, going into the middle part of December, when the winter pattern might want to lock up. There's one other thing I want to show you, by the way, and I did not see anything from Dr. Judah Cohen about this, but I happened to pull up, going all the way up in the atmosphere here. I'm going to go up to the 10 millibar level, okay, and look at the stratosphere. Now, I gotta tell you, I am not well versed in how all these things work up in stratospheric land. That's Dr. Cohen's bailiwick, and he talks about the polar vortex in the stratosphere getting pretty strong. But I did notice that you start to see after day 9, it is in the long range, but the vortex attempts a split in the long range, and this would be around December, starting from December 9th to the 12th. Now that might wind up translating on the surface toward or just past Christmas time. So I've run this out to a couple of buddies of mine who know this stuff a bit more, but you know, there's a bit of a lag time between when you start to see these splits happen. This implies that there's going to be some kind of warming up into the Arctic regions in the stratosphere. You can see this big upper high that's in the Aleutians kind of pushing there. So this could be a signal that we may get into a blocking pattern of some kind later in the month of December. Let's put it out there and let's watch the models over the next several days. We don't have to look at every run, but we'll take a look at it every once in a while and see what happens. Last year when we had the big vortex split in mid-February, it ultimately wound up with that major league block developing in March, and of course, we know what happened with that, and we'll see if it's going to be the same story this time around. So, coming back to you guys on the board, got a nice little crowd on today, so good to see everybody here. I did see Scott Briller, that post of his, say that it's a tug of war right now between the Madden-Julian oscillation, that's out in the tropical Pacific, way out in the Pacific and toward the Indian Ocean. It's in a phase where it normally favors colder and snowier weather in the wintertime in the Northeast, and battling against what's going on with the polar vortex, which might suggest that, the polar vortex in its position might want to try to pop a ridge in the east and drop a trough in the west. If you look at the overall pattern, I think it would be suggestive, at least in the first half of the long-range period, out through days 9 and 10, that the Madden-Julian oscillation is winning that particular battle. But whether it continues to win that battle remains to be seen. Yeah, Johnny Quest, to slim to none. But you know what? I kind of think that there could be, you could wind up with another 1 to 2 inch rain producer from each one. But let's see what it looks like in another day or two as we get closer. The second one, I think, looks a little bit more impressive than the first, but we'll keep an eye on it. 99 Wolves, so 9 to 12 up in your land near Chicago in Arlington Heights, and you finally getting your power back, which is a good thing. Robert Hurley, would that vortex bring a cold pattern for the Northeast? Well, the stratosphere kind of works in reverse than what the bottom part of the atmosphere does. So actually, if you see the Arctic regions warmer in the stratosphere or a weaker polar vortex, that would actually translate to it being colder. But if it, when you see those splits showing a major warming event occurring, that has preceded some rather hefty looking blocking patterns that we've seen. So I think we're going to want to pay attention to that over the next number of days. We're going to, every so often, we'll give a look to see, because it could be there for one run and definitely gone the next. So I want to see a little bit of consistency and wait till it gets inside 120. I can tell you from watching that on and off last winter that it splits far less than what the models try to do. Okay, the models will attempted so many splits along the way, and oftentimes those splits don't happen. So I want to view this with a little bit of skepticism. What is the worst snowstorm the Northeast has ever had, in my opinion? Joe Rayo would be good at this, because he could tell me what the year was. If it was back in the 70s, there was one where it snowed in Boston for night. I think each area has a different answer to that question. In the Northeast is a pretty big place. So I think your answers for Western New York and upstate New York are going to be a lot different than coastal areas. There was a storm, I think, back in the early 70s. It snowed in Boston for, I think, 100 consecutive hours. And they wound up with 2 to 3 feet, but that was spread over a 4-day period. The blizzard of 78 is probably up there. The 96 blizzard probably up there. Again, for coastal areas. Inland areas, you had that one storm last year that dumped 40. Wasn't it last year that we had that one storm that dumped over 40 inches in parts of upstate New York, one of the March storms? So that's a loaded question that I would have to go back and look. It's only over the last couple of years that I've started paying much more attention to my. I've been I'm usually so local focused. You don't always remember the ones that don't occur here unless you're part of them. If there's a storm where you're getting something out of it, I might remember it. But I bet you there was a lot of there've been a lot of storms over the years that affected upstate New York and New England in a big way that didn't affect the coast, and I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to. Well, let's not get dramatic though, John Corner. Things looking bad for this winter all over the world. But you know what? We could actually take a look. at Europe. I'll bring that up. New York Jets fan weather. Tough fan to be as a New York Jet fan, as tough as it is being a Giant fan. 41 inches or so in New York last year, and then we had one of those with the powerhouse winds in March. Well, again, as I said, depending on every area is going to have a different answer to that that question. So again, what goes on upstairs is like in reverse. If you wind up with a very strong, tight polar vortex in the stratosphere, that actually will lead to warmer temperatures in the east. But it would depend on where the vortex is centered up in the Arctic regions there on the stratosphere. I really ought to get one of the guys that knows that stuff a lot better than I do to comment on that. But let me come back to the maps, and I feel a little extra energetic today because of the fact that hang on, I've been off. This is my first day back at work. I've been off for 4 days, so I actually got a nice break out of the day-to-day drive and grind that I do. Now let's come back to the GFS and take a look at Europe, because I haven't really looked at it much in the last several days or so. And where are you? Somebody asked me on one of the videos, left a question about how come I use the GFS and not the other models. Well, some of that has to do with the fact that when I do these live streams, the fresh GFS is out, so we have the latest model run. It's too early for the new NAM. When we have a short range issue, of course, we use the NAM, and I do use the other models. But in terms of the long range, with what's available at Tropical Tidbits, which is tremendous, by the way, you have a very limited amount to look at with the other models. So you work with what you got. Meanwhile, okay, so here's what it looks like in Europe with a big storm that's southwest of Ireland here, a 966 low. That lifts up, a little secondary low there at the point of occlusion, gets very close to the Northern Ireland coast. So it looks like big wind and rain sweeping in now across England and Ireland and Scotland. And that lifts out, and you still got more rain to deal with going into Friday, trying to see when the cold air gets in. And yet another system for Saturday, so pretty active pattern there coming in from off the Atlantic. And doesn't look like a whole lot from snow-wise, at least through the next 7 days, although you got another powerhouse low around day 7 and 8 coming into Ireland and Scotland. It doesn't look overly cold. You're getting a lot of waves of rain coming in from off the Atlantic. Still waiting, I guess. There is in the long range, some Siberian cold air here and building pressures. You got mostly east and southeast winds here toward the end of the period as you get into mid-December. Again, this is long range, so who knows if this is going to be what we see on the next run. I'm sure we're going to see it adjust to some degree, but I really don't have time to go too deep with regards to what is going on there. Thank you, Izzy. I really appreciate it. Wind and rain and wind this week for John Corner. D.O. Dan Kumar. So for the long-range models, there a possibility to get storms to form closer to the coast like the December 4th or 5th? I don't know. That's a short-range question, really. I do think that, because of the fact that what you're seeing right now, if you can get the cold air from Canada to become a bit more important with that really strong southern jet and the active systems that are coming into the Pacific, it could get pretty interesting here later in December. But that's a big if, and of course everything has to do with timing, and you don't always get the timing that you might want as these weather systems move across. But it's going to be fun to watch going forward, I think, over the next couple of weeks to see what the pattern ultimately evolves to. Because usually around mid to late December, you kind of start to get a sense of what the primary pattern is going to be. for the winter going forward. You know, last year it was the extreme volatility. This year maybe we'll have less in the way of volatility, kind of straddle more toward the middle ground with occasional shots of cold here and there, of extreme cold here and there. I don't know. I'm just kind of guessing off the top of my head. I'm not a long range guy. I've said that many times, and you know, the pattern will be what it will be. I get more fun watching it evolve out of the short range. And Michael Bologna, just bear in mind with your question about a 2 to 3 foot blizzard. We've had so many 20-inch plus storms in the last 18 years. If you wind up getting a break from that, where you don't see much in the way of big snowstorms, don't be shocked. It would go against what appears to be this kind of cyclical pattern that we're in, where we've been getting more and more of these bigger snowstorms of a foot plus. But, you know, patterns do like to even themselves out from time to time. So at some point, we're going to get a subpar winter here in the eastern part of the United States. Certainly this November is not starting off that way for many areas. We are going to be above normal. Anybody that's sitting from Washington, D.C. Up through New England and west through Pennsylvania and into western New York, and even further west in there and across the Great Lakes, this is going to go down as a, I guess we can call it a Snowvember to remember, as someone quoted out to me a couple of hours ago. I think that really works, that phrase. All right, so let us now, at this point, I think we can call it a night, but let me just make you aware of a few things. We will have a Joe and Joe show tonight because for the first time in almost a week, we're both here. So that will be on Facebook tonight, figure probably at around 9:15 or 9:20. So just go to my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and you can watch the Joe and Joe weather show. Also, for those of you who are new to my channel, my YouTube channel, thanks for being here, and do hit the subscribe button and become a subscriber to my YouTube channel so you can get notifications on these live streams, which we do daily. And some of you might want to be more involved and have more weather all of the time, and you can do that by signing on to my weather platform that I have on Patreon. It's just $2 a month, and that not only gives you exclusive posts, but it gives you also live streams that you get only for Patreon members. And as Scott Briller will tell you, as he just did, it's a great, friendly, non-troll weather community. And I'm really glad it's evolved that way. So again, that's a subscription site. It's just $2 a month, and you are certainly welcome to consider it. Also, for those of you who have an Android device, an Android mobile device, you can download my app for free. And there's the app link on Google Play, and you'll get all the latest posts that I do on my website in an easy loading fashion with no issues, or for the most part, no issues. You iPhone folks will have to wait. Still waiting for approval from Apple with regards to the iPhone version of this. But as soon as I can, as soon as they give me the okay and they put it up on the Apple on the App Store, I will give you the let you know what the iPhone app is. And one other easy way to support my channel, if you are a shopper on Amazon, okay, you can use my link to get to Amazon, and when you get your stuff, you get it, and Amazon throws me back some coin out of their pocket, so it doesn't cost you a cent. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated site. So if you do shop through Amazon on my link, Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin. For those of you on Long Island, we are going to have our next library talk in Babylon on Wednesday, December the 12th, and that will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So mark that down on your calendar if you are on Long Island to take a break from the hecticness of holiday shopping and come on out and enjoy the weather presentation that I will be having again. Babylon Library, Wednesday, December 12th at 7 p.m. And we'll have more on that going forward. I think that just about covers it. So thank you, Chris Alley. I really appreciate it, what you said. Let's see. Trying to think. Barbara Ryan, any hopes for the Mid-Atlantic states? Just want you to know, if this was going to be a white Christmas. Well, look, Barbara, we got to get that cold, the cold air, considering the time of year, the cold air has been pretty far to the south. I mean, when was the last time Washington, D.C. got a 1 to 3 inch snowfall in the month of November from what we saw back on November 15th? So, there's a lot of things here to like going forward if you're a snow lover with respect to what's going on in the upper atmosphere. So what you want to see is that Canadian jet strengthen enough where it brings that cold air further south. If it strengthens too much, then it overwhelms, and then you're just cold and dry, and everything goes way to the south. So that's when the southern states get their snow and ice, and it all goes south of the Mid-Atlantic states and stays pretty much, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, those areas. That's when you guys do well. If there's too much cold air and too strong a Canadian jet. So you want that kind of delicate balance. So if we have what we have now, or what we've been having, bring that Canadian jet down a bit further to the south, then, you could be in business as a snow lover as we get deeper into December, and particularly as we get into late December, January, and February. But all of this hinges on the fact that the pattern has to kind of hold, and there's no guarantee that what we're seeing now is going to carry through into the middle and latter part of December and going into early January. So we just watch and wait and see what happens. And we'll see if blocking gets involved, because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Doesn't always have to be there. So you just kind of, that's why it's just easier, I think, if you would develop the perspective of kind of stay focused inside that 10-day time frame and let the long range will take care of itself in the last analysis. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Always a pleasure. And we will see you either later on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook at about 9:20, or we will see you tomorrow either on the Patreon live stream tomorrow morning, which I didn't get to do today because I ran out of time. But if you're a Patreon member, you'll get your live stream tomorrow morning. Keep your fingers crossed. And then we'll be back tomorrow night with our regular YouTube live stream here, probably at about 7 o'clock Eastern time. Good night, everybody.